Welcome to The Microscopists, a bite-sized bio podcast, hosted by Peter O'Toole, sponsored by Zeiss Microscopy. Today on The Microscopists.
Hi, I'm Peter O'Toole, and today I'm talking with Petra Schwiller from the Max Planck Institute about all sorts of things, including her need for new tasks and new ideas.
I think I would still do the same as like 30 years ago. I would die.
The benefit of working overseas.
It was really good for me to go abroad.
And how she balanced her career to have a child, only to end up eventually with 3 of them.
You get a bit addicted to having kids. Once you have the first, then you want the next.
All in this episode of The Microscopists. Hi, I'm Peter O'Toole, and today I'm joined by Petra Schwiller from the Max Planck Institute. Petra, hi.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Yeah, well, do you know, talking of meeting, I remember my first time of meeting you, which was back in 2001.
Oh.
And actually, I was talking to Ricardo Henriquez recently, and I was in email contact with Claudio Lucas, and we were all at the same course. So actually, we were students of an EMBO course at EMBL in Heidelberg for advanced light microscopy imaging at the time. And you were one of the you were one of the guest invited big name speakers. And that's back in 2001. So I don't know if you remember the event.
Well, yes, I pretty much remember the event. I always enjoyed these weeks. It was usually weeks that we spent at the EMBL and in these little booths, and it was always really good equipment. That was great.
Just good equipment. It was great inspiring speakers. So you were one of the inspiring speakers talking about FCS, and I'd never come across fluorescence correlation spectroscopy at the time. I think also there was Stefan Hell, Ernst Stelzer, a whole, just so many leading microscopists. Mostly male, may I say, when I look back at it. But the great thing is not only did you give the lecture, you also, as you say, those small booths, you were in there hands-on teaching. I think it was 2 photon FCS that you were demonstrating to us.
Could be. Long ago,
I mean, GFP, and that's where I learned from you actually that GFP blinks can be quite annoying at times.
It still blinks.
Yes. A blinking nuisance, some may say, when it does do that. That's correct. So where did you start your career?
I started my, the real scientific career, I started in Göttingen at the Max Planck Institute for Biophysical Chemistry with Manfred Eigen, at that time already close to retirement, a Nobel Prize winner, who started very late in his scientific work a new technology, namely single molecule fluorescence spectroscopy. And that was at that time when I applied with him. I wanted to do something completely different. I wanted to do theoretical evolution. And he basically told me, no, that's not what I want to do now. For the last couple of years, I would rather do something, real methodological. And he guided me around through his labs, and I fell in love immediately with the setup and the lab and everything. So I have that a very good memory to these times of my PhD.
So what was your degree in to start with?
Physics. I was a physicist.
It's physics.
Yes.
And you wanted to go into evolution from there.
The point is that really I always since I can think back, I always wondered about what life is. That was still my big question. What is it? What is that thing, right? So why is it different from a stone or the sun or whatever, a cloud, fire? What is different? And I deliberately did not study biology, although I was very fascinated by living systems, because you had to memorize so much, and I really never liked memorizing. I rather, I think I have a very small brain. I can compute very fast, but I cannot store anything. So I decided not to study biology because I just didn't want to learn all that stuff. And physics was just right, because maths, I liked maths all the time. And I found that physics, I mean, you can do everything with physics. You become even a chancellor with physics. So that was a great subject. But I didn't like to study it, I have to say. At that time, it was very, very dull as a student. It was taught in an obnoxious way in the 90s in Germany. You were basically watching the guy writing formulas at a blackboard. That was basically the lectures in physics when I was studying. That has changed quite a bit.
Yeah, that sounds like some of my organic chemistry teaching.
Yeah, chemistry was not much better. I mean, chemistry, at least there were the experiments that, made a lot of smoke and noise. But so I really didn't like the studying much. But when I entered the lab first time, I really loved it. To the bone, I'm an experimental person, I have to say. Also, I always dreamt of being a big theoretical physicist, but that did not work out.
So here's an interesting question then. How much time do you now spend in the lab?
0. I don't go to the lab. I mean, of course, I go through the lab and talk with my people, but I haven't touched an instrument in the last 20 years.
So I think that certainly for younger people listening, watching this at the moment, I think it's quite hard to get your head around that you love being in the lab so much. Yeah. And yet, as your career progresses, you find yourself less and less in the lab. But still loving your work. Yeah,
I mean, that's absolutely true. And I sometimes wonder myself how I can manage not to go to the lab anymore, because now I have all these really great instruments that I always dreamt of. I mean, all of these really cool techniques and AFM and ARF, and then we have the cryo-EMs, and it would be fantastic to do the work, but no anymore. And my students are actually glad that I don't go and touch the instruments, because I might make a mess of everything. But I'm probably a bit different from many other scientists, that I'm very easily I need new stuff from time to time. If I think I would still do the same as like 30 years ago, I would die because of boredom. I really need new tasks, new ideas, new concepts from once in a while.
But is that not part of the success path? That I think if you try and plough the same field with the same crop year on year, the crop dries up. It becomes, the yield becomes less. You have to reinvent yourself.
I think it depends a bit what kind of a personality you are. I mean, there are these people who are basically thinking about the same phenomenon for decades, and at the end they succeed and make something really big. And then there's the other guys who just burn for so many things and rather do their, inspire others. I would think that I at a time I was a real lab worm with, fluorescence microscopy and spectroscopy, and I really loved it and I was really good at it. But it's okay, I'm not anymore. So I think I could still build an FCS rig, but it would take a bit longer than it used to.
I can certainly use pretty much every instrument I've ever used. The problem now is on the new instruments, it's the software. It's the software that changes and pulls the legs from under you.
But the software has become much user-friendly, hasn't it? I mean, if you program now, I mean, if I see my kids programming, they have all these, graphical programming tools. It's really like you only drag things together, and you don't have to write this really boring codes in a black and white screen.
That's what my son actually loves. He's 19 and that's all he does is code. Lots of it. Actually, maths he finds maths more challenging, and coding he just finds, and computing just very, very simple to him. So he enjoys his challenge with his maths, but putting with the computer science with it as well. So I really struggle with all of that. Very much I guess
I would probably too if I tried, but fortunately I haven't. I just watch it from afar.
So when you went into the lab and it changed of direction, it wasn't evolution.
Yeah, it
Was
wasn't
that your
even.
first time with a microscope?
Yeah, that was the first time. I mean, I did some, an experimental thesis in my diploma, but that was really, really low tech. I mean, that was ultrasound and that, I mean, that was really very, it was okay, but it was very cheap lab stuff. And then what we got at the Max Planck in Göttingen, that was really super cool, high-end devices, lasers, detectors, microscopes. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, I liked that a lot.
And so, but from that, where did you see your career at that moment in time? Where did you see your career going?
Nowhere. I had no idea. I like to, this was really true. I mean, as a girl in the 90s in science, I did just, I like to say that the only thing I kind of knew intuitively is that I wanted to have a job without a boss. That was absolutely clear for me. So what kind of job that would be was not clear. But a boss I never would like to have. I mean, the good thing about my PhD advisor and my postdoc advisor, they were all men, hardly there. I mean, into my PhD advisor, I run into twice, 3 times a year. So wow. I was really free. I got my money, and from time to time, he wanted to know what I'm doing, but otherwise, I was really free.
Yeah, it's a lot of self-motivation to drive through on that level of contact is very low. My PhD supervisor was very hands-off, so I could always knock on his door.
I could not knock at his door. He was just not there. Half the year he was in the US, and when he was there, he was basically traveling the country, lecturing to more important people. So it was good into my second year as a PhD student that I met him, and he didn't know my name. So,
okay.
But I didn't feel bad about that. I mean, I knew that when I applied with him, it was clear, Nobel Prize winner in the upper 60s. I mean, come on. I mean, you're not expecting to get a very tight tuition from this person.
So how much support was there within the lab group itself then? There must have been some help and direction within that.
No, not really. I mean, we were basically 2 PhD students who were very active. There was another buddy who basically started a bit earlier than I did, and he had everything under control, and he was a really good peer because I just watched him doing things and kind of mimicked him. And then we were really good lab mates and did most things together. And there we had a collaborating group with Rudolf Riegler in Stockholm with really good postdocs and other PhD students who were a bit advanced in the technology we were doing, and they trained us well. So we got our training with collaborators and people we knew, but not it was not one of these very clear structured labs where you know exactly who your boss is and who you can go to if you have a problem. That was pretty much self-made project and careers. We had there was another senior PhD student who was also very well organized, and he brought the need of publication into the lab. Eigen did not care a bit what we would publish and not publish. So there was one PhD student who had a very clear idea that he wanted to publish, and we just followed his example and at some point published our own stuff.
I'm just amazed at the lack of.
Absolutely, it was. Retrospectively, I wonder how I survived. It was really, meandering and, random walking through this whole scientific scene.
So how many hours a day were you putting in at that point? Can you recall?
Every day from, 9 to 7, 8 at night. It was basically the whole day and the whole weekend, and it was okay. It was. I know I had my leisure time. It was not that I was living in the lab, but it was really, really long. at least in the last year. That was basically around the clock.
So thinking of leisure time, what was your number one thing that you did outside of the lab at the time?
In Göttingen, it was basically only music. I mean, I liked hiking, so we went out to the, whatever that was, woods, but music was number one. Singing and playing.
This picture, I have to duck completely out of the way of this picture, because that's a lovely piano that you have there.
Yeah, that's the.
But you have every other instrument I can't even name them all, I don't think.
Yeah.
So what instruments have you got here?
So yeah, well, so the ones that I play best is probably the viola, which is at the very left. That is my, I would say, number one instrument. And I started playing the violin, but I at some point was too lazy to practice. And if you're too lazy to practice as a violinist, then don't tell this to the real viola players. Then you end up as a viola. And then as a kid, I learned the piano and the trumpet. I played the trumpet for very long, and the French horn I played for some years in Göttingen, even in a forestry ensemble where all had these par-force horns, very cool things. And a couple of years ago, I learned the clarinet because I had a problem with my neck, and it was very hard for me to play a string instrument. So I played the clarinet, and very recently, because my daughter urged me to purchase a saxophone, so I purchased the saxophone, and that's also a lot of fun. And what else is there? Yeah, there's a, how do you call this, accordion? Yep. I cannot really play it. But if you can play the piano, then you can make your, you can somehow accompany singers with it.
That's firstly a huge number of instruments.
Yeah, I cannot play them all well.
So I've got a piano in the background, but I only play 2 or 3 instruments to a very low standard. Mm-hmm. Now I'm looking at the quality of your instruments there, and I'm assuming this is to a very high standard.
Not really, no. I mean, I think I can play the viola reasonably well, so that I don't hurt in a string quartet. But it's not that I would call myself, anyhow a professional or expert.
I'm just looking at your lovely piano there as well. I think you're being modest.
It's a really nice one. Yeah. There was actually an aunt died 3 years ago, and I inherited some money, and I didn't know what to do with the money, and then I bought the grand piano, and that was the best thing to do with my money, I have to say. It's so much fun. It's so much more fun than a normal piano. It's a completely different instrument.
I haven't got space for it.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Nor do I have the skill for it.
There's always a possibility to practice. A piano you can actually start very late.
I'm looking forward to getting older and actually starting back again. But I think with children and everything else I do, there's just not enough time at the moment. But you obviously put a lot of time into your music as well.
And actually, the funny thing, at that time in Göttingen, I was actually singing most of the time in choirs. And I played the viola, but and the violin. Oh no, in Göttingen I played the violin. And I was singing in a very good choir, and that was my evening entertainment, so to speak.
I'm still in awe of the sheer number of instruments. And I've always argued that artists never make good scientists. And scientists never make good artists.
No. I mean, graphical arts, I suck. I'm totally. I'm also not a big art, understander. If I go in a museum, doesn't talk to me. But the ear, that is different.
Yeah, I think maybe it's a different art, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a different art.
There's a lot of scientists who do music but cannot. How do we get away as microscopists without being able to draw? Think about microscopy. Many years ago, you had to hand draw it. I would argue they were never scientists. They were just good artists using different media to find something to draw, not necessarily really understanding what they're drawing.
That's actually true. I mean, I think I would probably not be such a good microscopist. I'm more a spectroscopist. I mean, microscopy is more fun than spectroscopy because you have these shiny images. But really, I'm a single molecule spectroscopist. That's really what I am.
Yeah, which is
you don't have to draw much there.
I had a question earlier, actually, for later on. I'll ask it now, because obviously you started out as a physicist. You're now very much all your impacts, all your direction is in the world of biological studies. I guess optimally a biophysicist.
Yeah. I would say I'm definitely a biophysicist.
So are you a better biologist, a better physicist, or a biophysicist that sits somewhere between them?
I think, if you had to categorize, I actually am probably in the best sense, I'm a physical chemist. That's really what resonates with me. My brain operates as a physical chemist. Biology, I really suck, I have to say. I'm interested in biology, but it's too much information.
I've got it, because I actually had a three-way question. What would you class yourself as, a biologist, physicist, or chemist, with 3 question marks after it? That's what I had on my question. I should have got the chemistry in there quicker.
Yeah. If I had to choose between chemistry and physics, I still would go for the physics side, because also chemistry you have to memorize a lot. But in physics, definitely physical chemistry or chemical physics.
So after your time there, you then went over to Cornell. Is that correct?
Yes, Cornell.
Well, that must have been a big step.
Yeah, that was a big step. That was really also, personality-wise, a big step, because at that time, Germany was still very conservative, and you cannot even compare it with Germany, the German research as it is now, when every single professor has been in, US or UK. At that time, it was relatively conservative with the habilitations and all that. So it was really good for me to go abroad for these 2 years. And besides, it was a fantastic lab and fantastic colleagues. Cornell is a spectacular campus, probably the nicest campus on earth. I have seen many, and I haven't seen such a nice one with, rivers and gorges on the campus, the whole thing overlooking a lake. That's even better than, San Diego or so.
So, and how was it? The one thing is, the working life is obviously very different there. The culture at that point, as you sort of indicated, was very different to what it was in Germany back then. How do you think the two compare now?
I would say that still, the US, it was basically work was life. There was no, holiday or weekend culture was not existing, and that is still the same, I would say. If you see how many holiday hours people get in holiday days, people get in Germany, and take it for granted and as their right, and their life, and in the US, holiday, what is that, right? So you get a couple of days, but you better not take them, right? It's really different still. But in terms of science in the lab and the hierarchy, where you basically are on terms with your professor, so I think that has has grown similar. We do not have the the bow tie director or professor anymore. Well, there are some, but it's not the norm, I would say. It's still, you have your buddies and you have the lab life. The only difference that you have much more space in Germany, which is good in Corona times. The labs are much bigger. You have a much bigger desk, but besides that, it's very similar.
So what about on a personal level, though? You're very young. You're switching countries to carry on your research. That also has a lot of logistical and just must be some apprehension in doing that.
Yeah, it was easy at that time. I didn't have much. I had my now husband was already my boyfriend at that time. It was very clear he would not come with me. Because he had a job that was not transferable, and so it was clear I was going on my own for 2 years. That was my stipend, lasted for 2 years, and it was clear to me that I actually wanted to go back to Germany after 2 years. So it was a relatively minor move. I did this stupid thing and boxed, plates and spoons and things like that for my household and shipped it to the US. Also, you could, for the price of shipping, you could have just bought everything new. But that is the mistake you do.
And so it's always a short burn, But I presume that was a big plus on the CV when coming back to Germany.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not so sure. Of course, there are people who are looking, did this person move, which I think is completely ridiculous. It doesn't mean anything. I mean, somebody can stay in one city the whole career and be a fantastic scientist, and another one can move around and not gain much from it. What was good for me that I just had endless freedom and a super nice interest. And what was very important, and probably I should emphasize this, because the conservativeness of Germany also was in my brain, right? So I had absolutely no idea what I should prepare for as a career. And I really like to tell this episode anecdote, everyone who wants to hear it, but it's really telling. At the very end of my PhD, when everything was already successful, it was clear that that my PhD was really good. I went to my PhD advisor, Manfred Eigen, and asked him, "Do you think I could become a professor?" And then he, it's very hard and a very long way. And he was obviously not. He didn't want to, make me, expect too much from this. And only a couple months later, it wasn't only half a year or so, I in the US, I started and had a lot of fun. And I asked the same question to my American PI, and he just was looking at me, of course, what else do you want to become? And that was different, right? So the very conservative, very, rather demotivating attitude in Germany, and the super, emphatic and also, how you call it, supportive and optimistic. It's optimistic way of doing science in the US.
So would you say that maybe that was a moment that you realized that you are going to succeed here? You are going to have your
that was the reason. That was the moment when I thought that it could actually. But when I even thought about it, I mean, even when I planned my postdoc, I did not expect it to be a step towards a professorship. I just didn't know what to do else. I didn't want to go to industry because obviously I would have to have a boss there. So I decided, no. Let's just keep doing science for the next couple of years and then see what comes of it.
Right, so that sounds very familiar. I was very similar. I did a PhD because I enjoyed research. I did a postdoc because I didn't want to stop research. I wasn't really thinking about the next step. I think today it's very different. We almost drill the PhDs and postdocs into thinking, what is their next career step? We have an obligation to make them think so they don't fall off the end. But at the same time, we also have to let people enjoy their research.
Absolutely.
And see if they have got a flair for it and not beat it out of them. And it sounds as though America really helped in that way.
Oh yeah, I'm really grateful to that time and to my colleagues and my advisor and all, all aspects that made that successful.
About 3 years after coming back from there, you got your professorship.
Yeah.
You were mega young to get a professorship.
Actually, I think I was just right. and everybody who becomes older is actually too old, because why should people not get their professorships with 35, 34? Yeah. Your brain is there, your experience is there. So what else do you want, right? So I think it was just the right time, and we should make it possible for people to become professors at that age. And that is still an exception. It's just wrong.
There's so few examples though that get there.
I know, and that is not good. That is really bad.
There's like a reluctance, or you always get a feeling that they have to do so many years of proving.
Yeah, you always. It's he or she is only 40, is still a junior researcher. Come on, with 40, you're not a junior researcher anymore. You're just middle-aged researcher, and you should better be a professor already, right? And not wait for it anymore. So I really think this is, and that's actually interestingly same everywhere. Also, people are younger when they do their PhD in the UK or the master in the US. It's just a wrong thing, and it should not be like this.
There are some in their 30s that still get their professorships, and they are you know, they're usually really great people. And they're not all work orientated.
I mean, of course, it depends a bit what kind of approach. I mean, the biologists usually tell me that you cannot do a PhD in 3 years. So I actually was a pretty old, diploma student. So I did not speed up. It took me until I was, when did I do my PhD? My postdoc with my diploma in 93, that I was 25 when I had my diploma. That's just okay, that's not fast. And then I did my PhD in 3 years, and that's the fast part, right? And then I did the postdoc only for 2 years. And after 2 years, I already, had this amazing opportunity to become a research group leader. That was really young, I have to say. But I also did do a lot in these 2 years of postdoc. So I had a lot of papers already after the first year.
No,
So,
well, obviously before I met you back in 2001, we already developed two photon. Realized in the actual application of two photon FCS.
So that was a very productive time, just
which is it's interesting to hear about starting a group at so young. That must also be daunting to, or maybe at a young age you don't think about it so much.
Yeah,
you just do it.
I think you just don't worry so much. It's okay. I got very nice and very good students, and a postdoc who was very, very helpful. He was actually, he was actually my PhD colleague and wanted to found a company, and suggested me to become that he would become my postdoc and would be free for founding the company, and at the same time supervise one of my PhD students. And it was just a good, win-win situation.
And then I'm going to ask, because we talked a bit about your early life and with the music as a big theme in the background. The one thing I think, certainly from physics, the male-female divide, there's not as much representation. Biology, I think, is really good. I think there's quite a good representation and equality. In physics, maybe less so, maybe because that's a choice at a younger, for whatever reason. But then I do think there was also difficulties about raising a family as well. Yeah,
I guess that's always, I mean, it was not, I had this big advantage that I was still young when I had my professorship. So I was not a big family person. I never really, in the same way, I never really wanted to have a boss. I also never want to have a husband, and I wasn't very big in kids, so I did not really care much about kids. So that was not, on my mind in a way that it prohibited my career somehow. So I only when I had already everything in my hand, when I was a professor and nobody could do anything anymore, then I decided to have to give it a try and have some kids. Actually, one kid. I wanted to.
Sounds so wrong.
I wanted to. It's totally wrong. You should not have. I mean, it's. Don't copy me, but this was how it was, right? So I wanted to have one kid because I was one kid, and it was just the right number. But then I somehow got attached to the to the process. It's kind of you get a bit addicted to having kids. Once you have the first, then you want the next.
There's so many jokes around that line. I'm not going to go there right now.
Yeah, so, no, that is a big advantage. If you're a professor when you start having kids, I mean that's another argument for trying to make professors younger. That you're not dependent on anyone. Of course, you're dependent on your husband helping you and your childcare situation. Of course, there needs to be some sort of a childcare, but it's not, if you cannot come for one day, nobody can blame you, right? So you're just not coming.
No, I think, well, I hope things are getting a lot better in that area. I think where we are at York, I think is exceptionally good. Certainly in biology, I think it's very supportive. But there's still areas that can improve across the board, I think. And I guess that will change in time. Just be nice if it was a bit faster, if we could get there. You have 3 girls, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I've got 3 boys. I bet you my life is a lot easier than yours. I don't know, but boys are dead easy.
I mean, they're just very good kids, and I was, we were also very lucky that they were all healthy, and there are so far no problems besides, of course, school issues that you always have somehow. But I have to say that I was very, very lucky with childcare all along my career. I mean, in Dresden is Eastern Germany, and they had a really good childcare system where you did not, of course, there was, after school there was hot, so there was a full, for the whole day you had childcare. And also here in Munich, I mean, the bigger cities in Germany are really good. And my husband, your partner also matters, obviously. So, and my husband, it was very clear that we do it together, and that he does, we have 50-50 share of the time that we invest for the kids. And I mean, of course, I mean, this is something that is absolutely clear. You do not have the same time for your science as if you would not have kids, regardless of childcare. It's just, I mean, you need half of your brain for your family, and this half of your brain is not there for research anymore. Yeah. I mean, this is how it is. I mean, I'm not in the same way, 100% science as I was as a postdoc.
I think that was
impossible. This is impossible. How could that be?
But I bet you still live and breathe your subject. I'll just go.
Yeah.
It was good that you said that your husband still matters. It was still important, I think you said, because I think a few sentences before that you said that you didn't care for a husband. So I thought I was
no. Not for a partner, and a husband is a different thing. So I was very, very rigorously against marrying. I mean, not having a partner at all. That of course, you want a partner, obviously, but no, I really dislike the concept of being married, and that's probably my generation, that to be kind of aware that it can become very bad for your career if you're married.
Oof. Is that from a female perspective?
From a female, of course, yeah. From a female.
Okay. I've never thought. Okay, so now I've
only from a female perspective. As a male, why would it matter?
Yeah, I guess so. But yeah. Gosh, how things are different, and how times have changed. I think again.
That has changed. I mean, this is not as it was. I mean, I would say I'm fortunately I'm already in a generation where women have kids, but I would say the generation before mine, women, if they wanted to do real research, the rate of women having kids is very low.
So what do you do with your children? How do you spend your time? I know it's quite. Mine are a bit older, I think, than yours. Mine are 13, 16, and 19.
Yeah.
Lockdown's been really good over that lockdown period because I was at least around more, and I could show my face at lunch.
Yeah.
And just every now and then I could find time to do something with them. Not as much as I should. I know. I love my work, but what you've got to find something to do with them.
So one really, really good thing is that all my kids are very musical. So they play the instruments much better than I do. So I whenever I can, I play music with them. So and also hiking in the mountains they like. So that I can also do with them.
So I have a question. What style of music do they all like?
Classical music. Classical music. We are totally, before 1900, probably before 1950, but definitely string quartets, chamber music.
So they're not.
And they all play in orchestras. They actually play in very good orchestras. I couldn't play in these.
So they're not into big rap music or anything like that.
No.
Yeah, you're so lucky. You're so lucky.
Yeah.
I listen to the rap music. I have not a clue what's interesting about some of the rap music.
I have to say that this was a big investment of my time when the kids were small to help them practice, because string instruments you have to practice, and very few like to do it. So I spent really hours in my in the 2000s when the kids were still small, to practice with them, and that was that was no fun. That was just hard work. I mean, we basically fought all the time and yelled at each other, and it was not nice. But now it was worth it.
So now they yell at you as they're teaching you if they're better? Come
no,
on.
they are very friendly. They just say, well, you're only the viola. It's okay if you do much mistakes. No, they are relatively professional. I mean, in the worst case, they don't play with me because I'm not good enough, but they don't yell at me.
So you also said that you enjoy a lot of climbing.
Yes, that's another thing that
I quite like this picture because it looks like you're sitting on my shoulder.
Yeah.
So this is where are you in this picture? Obviously in the mountain area, but
yeah, this is in the good thing about one good thing about Munich is that it's very close to the mountains. So in 1 hour you are in the middle of really cool mountains, and these are the Karwendel Mountains in a bit south of at the border between Germany and Austria. And they are fantastic because you can be you can find places where there's nobody. I mean, other places there's a lot of people, but it's very easy to be out there and up, and it goes to 3,000. So that's 3,000 is the is a Zugspitze, but on the Karwendel side it's 2,700 or so, and that's fine.
Right. So this looks super chilled, nice walking, relaxing, and then we start to get a little more extreme.
Yeah, that's still not extreme. Yeah. These are ferratas. I like to do them because you can do them on your own. You don't have to have I really like climbing, I have to say. I would, if I would have more time, I would rather do real climbing, with two or so, but I don't have the time, and so far nobody who goes with me. My husband is a very good sportler, but he's he's afraid of heights, so climbing is not his.
No.
My oldest daughter is already on my tracks, and with her, if she's we have to do some obviously some training, but we can go more serious stuff. But the ferratas, you don't need anyone, you just go. That's the good thing.
So in that case, I guess the ropes are there already laid out?
Exactly, they are fixed ropes that are, steel ropes, and then you just go. And there are many of them, in the south here. The nicest are in the Dolomites. These are actually here. This is my favorite place on earth here, the Dolomites. But that's already a bit further away, so you have to drive for 4 hours or so to get there.
But it's a nice way to relax.
Yeah.
But in winter, what do you do at that point?
Skiing and backcountry skiing is. Yeah. So that is also in the Dolomites actually. That is a backcountry hike.
So I'm envious.
Yeah.
We certainly don't have skiing over here.
That's really nice.
Disagree with me, but it's still limited in what you can do up there, and it's still a fair drive away. It's probably as quick for me to get on an aeroplane and come over.
Probably, yes.
It is to drive up to. Mind you, Scottish Highlands are lovely.
Yeah, I mean, you can do other things there. I mean, actually, there is good climbing there, I've heard. I've never been there, but.
I really funny story. I actually went to Scotland to celebrate, 40th birthdays for myself and my wife, just the two of us, left the children here with my parents. And we went up to the top of Ben Nevis, which is the highest point in the UK. And at the top of there, someone who worked for Molecular, this was in May, there was snow at the peak. There was hardly anyone up there because it wasn't during holidays. Yeah. And this guy comes bounding up to me saying hello, and he worked for Molecular Devices. It's like, oh, hi. We then went to another peak to look for ptarmigan, a bird which you only really get up in Scotland. And we were quite keen to see it. And there's no path to the top of this hill. There's no track. It's just you've got to find your own. So you end up following a stream up to the top. And on the way back down, there's a dog walker. And this dog walker was Alan Stewart from Leica. It's like, this is unreal. How can this be I'm in the middle of nowhere. No one climbs this place. And there he just happened to be staying in the same local village that he actually lives in.
This is really cool.
It's a small world. And microscopists are very well networked. We are everywhere.
And they like mountains, obviously.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah.
Actually, I did also meet 2 other people on the same holiday. My wife was just incredulous. She's just like, who are we going to meet today then? You know, we're in the middle of nowhere each time. And you say,
It's because you're so famous. So,
oh, no, it's just coincidence. Definitely just coincidence. And so, came back. So, your work-life balance, it sounds very full. There's never a moment, I guess, you know, because when you're at home, you're playing your music, you're with your children and enjoying it. So I guess it's a 100-mile-per-hour lifestyle, it sounds.
Yes, it is. Yeah. I mean, a colleague in Cornell basically once said to me that he was basically thinking that I was living 2 lives, and it's kind of, it feels a bit like this. I mean, of course, you always have to, you know, you always feel you're not doing the best possible job in either of them, but it's okay. Rather a non-perfect, you know, job in 2 fields than a perfect in only 1. I would miss something then. I mean, I have to say that now, of course, I don't want to imply that my science is not top, right? Of course it is. It's the best science in the world. But, you know, of course, I would, there was a time in my life that I worked my ass off for science, and this is not anymore the case.
And do you think it'd be possible to get into your position today without working your socks off in the early stages?
I don't think so.
And so I would totally agree with you. But I think at that early stage of your career, it doesn't feel like you're working your socks off.
No, exactly. That is only retrospectively that you see, oh my God, I really did work all the weekend through, and I enjoyed it. It was fantastic. I mean, in the winter times in Cornell, because we were working in the basement, I was not seeing the daylight at all. I was basically in the morning, I was going with my bike or skis or whatever I could to the lab, and it was still dark. And then I was in the lab in the dark the whole day, and then when I went home, it was dark again. So I really didn't see any daylight, and I never suffered from it. It was fine.
No, but because you enjoyed your work on it.
Exactly. And I had nice people around me. I mean, that also matters, of course. I mean, scientists are usually relatively nice people.
So everything so far sounds as though it's been, pretty easy going. You put the effort in, put the time in. Obviously got the creative mind, which is important to have the ideas to start with and then to be able to see them through. But at some point you must have had some difficulties or roadblocks to overcome.
Yeah, I was probably very lucky in not having really big roadblocks, I have to say. Of course, I mean, 2 years into my PhD, everything was going wrong. And I mean, like a normal PhD, right? The first year it works kind of, the second year nothing works, everything breaks down. And then the third year you're basically picking up, scattered pieces and try to assemble something. And that worked well. But, it's also, you have to be lucky. It can go wrong.
Maybe that's another thing is I think some of us do just get very lucky in our career.
Yeah, I think if without luck, probably you cannot make it. You have to. I mean, you can tend your luck and persuade yourself that you're actually lucky, and that helps a lot. I've always been rather good at that. Stay optimistic, stay positive. That always helps.
No, I think my former boss. I'm now that position, so maybe I don't. I still sort of have a boss, but I'm now. It doesn't matter. There's a line removed at least.
Yeah. Officially, I also have a boss, right? It's more like feeling a boss.
Yes. He always used to say that. I always used to say, look, I've just got lucky. And he'd always go, well, you always create your own luck.
That's definitely true. I mean, there's a certain will to be lucky that you have to have. But then again, also you have to be lucky to have that. So it's.
You must have heard the phrase that a cat has 9 lives.
Yeah.
And I've also thought that the number of times I've been pushed off a cliff and landed on my feet is where I've got lucky. There's been moments, even during lockdown, some high pressure moments you think, oh no, this is going really badly. And somehow you come out the other side and everything's worked out somehow. And I'm not sure if that's by luck or by design.
It's hard to disentangle, I would say.
No, but I guess the big thing is at those critical times, you keep putting the time in and the effort in to that key point, and hopefully it increases your chances of landing on your feet. One day I know it's not going to happen and it'll all come crashing down on me. But
That's
I
true
guess
for
if we
everyone.
didn't feel like that, we'd be too comfortable in our jobs. So that's good. So what about, of all the publications, I've asked this of quite a few people, I'm always interested to know what is their favorite publication that they have been an author or co-author on, and why is that your favorite publication?
Yeah, so I mean, of course, there are many aspects why something could be a favorite publication, but I think there are two most important publications for my career, and the first one is really my very first publication, my own first publication, my first author, because this was a paper that I wrote every single word alone without any help. I have two co-authors who, one gave me some DNA probes, and the other one was my official collaborator in Stockholm, who kind of at some point had an idea that I then, made into a paper. But that was, I carried that thing through from the beginning to the end and submitted it and everything. And I got back from Biophysical, I'm still grateful to Biophysical Journal for that letter. Thank you for submitting this publication to Biophysical Journal. Thank you for saying that, because it was a fantastic experience. It was my first, self-made publication, and also a very important one about cross-correlation. And the other one is our only science publication that we ever got. This is the Min protein self-organization, because this is just such a fantastic result that we got. That, I mean, when I saw this in the microscope, I thought I would dream. Where we saw this self-organization and pattern formation by these Min proteins. I've never seen something that beautiful ever again. I mean, we have now more beautiful images, but it was the first time that we saw them, and it was like, oh my God.
And I'm guessing we're not so dissimilar in age that when you had that manuscript, that was put in the post box. So more 2 copies or whatever. I can't remember how many copies we had to do in a big brown envelope and put it through the letterbox.
Yeah, exactly. That's the first time. Yeah, absolutely.
And then you got a letter back. It's always good to get that, because it just goes into a black hole. You don't know where it's gone to.
Yeah.
And of course, you then got loads. When it's published, you usually get 50 publications back of your publication for you to send out, and people used to write to you.
Yeah. You get this little card, right? And then you send it. Yeah. That was the old days.
Not about those cards. Yes, I remember. Right. Yeah. How do you get write that card and send it to me? Oh, good grief.
Actually, I just talked with a person from Eastern Germany, and they said that these cards were basically their own, in the time of the GDR, that was their, lifeline to real science, because they, of course, did not have the magazines, and they did not have the books. So they only lived through this, preprints.
Yeah.
And that basically they would share them with each other. So for them, these cards were really, really, really important.
No, how times change.
Yes.
How much easier. I don't know if it's better or worse now. I find
what is definitely, I mean, everything is much easier now. What is worse is that, the threshold for publications so low, and there are so many bad papers and so many bad journals, and that's not good.
And that could be so many bad reviewers as well.
Yeah.
Not doing their reviewing.
Oh yeah, that is another story. Yeah.
Which could also then come on to the stresses of the intensity of work. I think has gone up as well, because everything is so fast and so instant. There's a lot more of it to juggle.
And particularly in the high impact journals, I mean, what you get as reviews, I mean, it's like, this is just obnoxious. I mean, they basically ask you to write the full encyclopedia of a phenomenon. I mean, it's, just one paper where we discovered a very interesting mechanism and got that from a high impact journal. Basically, everything's nice, show it in vivo. We showed it in vivo. And then the next review was, but you haven't measured the exact force for that molecule. I mean, if you compare it, it was like from the time when people discovered molecular motors to the time that they could measure the force by one motor. It was basically like asking all of this in one publication. It's like, come on, leave other people something to do. I mean, it's fine that we reported a phenomenon and a mechanism. Why would we also have to spit out the numbers and every possible thing you could know about this molecule? Yeah, it's this is just fresh on my mind. That for that reason, I mean, it's like they're just. I mean, people are. They are not reasonable in no risk. I mean, on the low side and on the high side.
I think that's a really crucial point that you've just made about a publication is about the work that's been done as a package.
Yeah.
And you're not wrong. The number of times you get questions coming back, which is in itself another year's
paper
project.
Exactly. It's another paper. It could be the next project for a PhD student, and it would be fine. It does not make any sense to hold up the publication of an interesting. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's not that they said, well, this is wrong and this is wrong. There's nothing wrong. It's just that we did not measure everything we could have measured. Come on. I mean, it will never be like this.
It's complimentary in a way that they've looked at it, read it, and want to know more.
It's fine. But why
from that side, maybe it's eager, but they can put that in a positive, I cannot wait for the next publication that can show this.
Yeah.
Or are they just showing off that they've thought of something you may not have thought of?
It's kind of a combination, and probably they had a hard time with their own last publication, so they want you to have a hard time too. I don't know. It's a mixture of not very positive human impulses, I would say.
So where's the empathy? It doesn't make the science any. It doesn't mean
doesn't make science any better.
Flawed. That's a review process.
You know, I'm a Max Planck director. If I don't get that thing published in that journal, then I don't get it published in that journal. Then I send it somewhere else. But the PhD student, he is with his nerves at the bottom. Basically, he completely gave up. I think this is something that might drive him out of science. I'm not kidding. He might at some point say, I'm not playing this game. And he's right. And that would be really bad.
I'm not leaving on that. That's a very sad point.
But an important one.
And I guess anyone who keeps a career in science has to build up quite a thick skin, become quite tolerant.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you have that, clearly.
But I think you see people, when you have collaborators, you see very different ways of handling reviewers' comments, both on grant applications and on manuscripts. Some explode in anger and fight back, fire with fire. Others are completely kowtowing and just go, oh, okay, we're not good. I do think there's a very happy medium here to listen and to rebut. And I think people need to have the confidence to rebut robustly and say, look, this is unreasonable. This is right, but we can't do that extra step. There's not time or funds quite often to do those extra steps.
Yes.
But I think editors need to also take that into consideration.
I think it is the maturity of the editors that determine at the end what. I mean, I've seen many ways of handling this, and unfortunately, I have to say that the big impact, Nature Science, Cell is not so bad, but Nature Science, I have to say that I sometimes feel that these editors lack confidence to just, say, come on, forget about this review. I mean, it's just, how can you not see how stupid it is? You must see it. I mean, it's in particular since it's a pattern. I mean, you have it all the time. Yeah. I have also witnessed other editors where, they say, well, we have this review, but you do this one more thing and it's going to be fine, right? That is very often the more senior scientific editors. And that makes the quality of a journal really, and not what the H factor is or so. The quality of a journal is really how an editor runs it.
I'm going to come out of science for a minute, because after a day like that, when you've had those problems, I will go home and I will eat, and I'll probably put the TV on Actually, I need to zone out. Just as I don't have to watch it, it just needs to be on, just background, if nothing else.
Yeah, I see that.
So, what would you rather, TV or a book?
I definitely like to read. I've since I can think I've always liked reading. I have not much read many books in the last years. I'm a newspaper addict. So I usually, if I have spare time, I usually take a newspaper or a magazine and read that. I don't know why that is. I don't have the stamina anymore for big books, and I'm also a very spoiled because I've really read very good books, and if I feel that a book it's not worth it, then I don't read it anymore. And I also have to say that I got sick of these usual stories like love stories and catastrophes, and at some point it's like you age, you've seen it all. There's very, very little that surprises you. So
Your face is such a bad picture of getting old. We're not even old yet.
No, but it's actually really true. I mean, I have to say that so often I feel that this story, I have seen it 100 times. I don't want to see it again. Like, it's really true. So newspapers, you always get something new in it. So.
Wow.
It's not very nice. It
different
doesn't
characters, maybe the same story.
Yeah, it doesn't raise your mood, but it is nevertheless interesting and important.
Are we talking a printed press here or online press?
Both. I have printed a newspaper that I get every day, and I have the weekly ones I have online.
Okay. I'll buy a paper quite often, sometimes on a Saturday, but otherwise it's online at that point.
But the funny thing is that the TV that runs very, very. We have a TV, and if we watch it, we usually watch either the news or a movie on video.
What was the last movie you watched then?
The Martian.
Okay.
We just watched it last night.
That wasn't bad. I thought it was quite good, actually. It was all right.
A really good movie. I liked it. My kids liked it also. So.
I think the last one I watched was John Wick 3, which is just the same as John Wick 2. And maybe it's just an action movie from start to end, but my children love it. And actually, it's not a bad action film. It is just gratuitous. But
I haven't heard of it, so I probably the German title is totally different. So I might.
I would. Yeah, it is just an action. Shoot them up, knife them, beat them up. One man can take on a whole army by himself type movie.
That kind of thing. Yeah.
Like you said about how books never change. I think movie.
Yeah, but it's even worse with movies. I have to agree. I mean, these movies I don't watch anymore. I sometimes I like. I mean, in the cinema, if you have the big show, then you can deal with it. But no,
it was entertaining. We laughed at quite a lot of it because that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's sad. My 13-year-old is almost getting too old now to watch children's TV, and it's always been nice to sit down and just watch a bit of children's TV with them, whether it be very early or lunchtime at the weekend or in the evening, just a bit, and just be with them when they're watching their TV.
Yes,
that's part of it.
Yeah, my kids are they very much want to watch something together. That's really something that they really love.
Yeah, this is changing now. They're now coding, mixing music, or playing on a PlayStation, some game of some sort.
Yeah, fortunately, that PlayStation thing did not enter our house. I mean, my kids like to play games on their, iPads or iPhones, but the PlayStation never made it to us.
At least the summer, we've had a decent summer this year. So actually, my youngest took up cricket.
Oh, nice!
At least I can bowl a ball and hit a ball.
Good.
Not too badly. Whereas football, my knees don't like football too much.
We have every year. We have not this year, but every other year we have summer games of our institute, and I every year I participated in the big soccer tournament of the different departments, and every year I hurt myself. one it was the knee, and then the arm, and something. I mean, it was not very bad, but always that I, a couple of weeks something hurt really badly. So that I spared myself this year because of Corona.
Yes, I might have pulled out. So Elmi, so Elmi is
yeah.
That was they have a pre-football match.
Mm-hmm.
I need to join that next time. But yeah, every I think this year 3 of us were quite nastily injured after it.
Yeah.
For some time after. One guy in his back was really bad after.
And I always injure myself. It's not that somebody does it. Yeah. They are all, I mean, they're very nice to me, right? It's not that they're running over me or so, but it's always, something is always going wrong.
Yeah, it's a bad jump or just a bad sprint. Yeah. It's never from.
Yeah. And since you don't practice, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't help,
A quick final thoughts, because I realise we're coming up to the end now with the hour mark. Any advice you'd give anyone starting out today? So you're PhD students. Actually, I'm going to ask a question. I've never asked this. What do you prefer? You might not want to answer. Who do you prefer to have in your lab? PhD students or postdocs? PhD
students, very clearly. Because you can, it's the way of growing into a problem is so much deeper. I mean, very rarely. I mean, I like my postdocs, and I have had very, very good postdocs. But usually it's a lottery whether it works or not for the postdocs. I mean, if they're really good, they always make something of their time here. Very often the postdocs already have their the concentration on the career after the post. Very few are free to really admire these precious 2 or 3 years where you have all the scientific brain and all the scientific freedom, which is, I think postdoc time, for me, the postdoc time was the most fantastic time. But that's not anymore the case. They very often have already, they are thinking about the next step, and are we missing something here? And so very rarely they can just concentrate on, the present and do their work. For the PhD students, it's just the possibility that they have 3 to 4 years of maturing, which is so much better.
Now that I think I can guess the question to what the answer to what my last question was, which was, what advice would you give someone that's starting out today in their career?
Well, I mean, for the PhD, I cannot give much advice. I mean, during the PhD, you basically have to find out for yourself whether you are a scientist or not. And I think it's really clear if you're very alert and if you're very objective, then you know it. And I think that is basically what you have to decide by the end of the PhD. Am I a 100% academic scientist, or am I not? And if you're not, and that's absolutely nothing wrong with that, because the world needs good scientists also that are not academic. And if you are, then something that I would definitely recommend for every postdoc: don't follow the projects, but formulate your own project and do it from the day one of your postdoc.
So I'm going to challenge now. I hope I get the right answer to this. A postdoc starts on a funded project which has a start, a middle, and an end described in the application that was funded. How can they follow their own path within it?
The whole construction is wrong. I don't think it's a good idea to have that for postdocs, because you never find the person. I mean, unless you're formulating this project for somebody you know already. That happens, right? So sometimes you know that a student coming from another lab will come to your lab and do something about this. So for a PhD, I would always say in a grant application, a PhD is much more useful than a postdoc, because the PhD can really do the work, right? A postdoc, unless you find this person, right, that can do it. Yeah.
In the UK, typically most grants will be postdocs.
Yeah, I mean,
and they have that very prescriptive thing, I think that the most successful academics, they will start at that start point, but they may end up at the end of that somewhere completely different.
Absolutely.
And successful.
That's always possible that you are on a project, and then the funding agency gives you the freedom to not do what is written there, but do something else, and they're still happy. I mean, at least that's true for the German Research Foundation.
I don't know if it's written anywhere, but I think if you're successful, if you start in the same place and end up somewhere totally different, but succeed and make an impact and publish and show worth, I think that's a win. And I think actually
absolutely
it's the best route forward.
Yeah, and every decent funding agency will cherish that also.
Yeah. That's what academic science is about, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. You can never say what comes out. I mean, you can only say what you want to work on.
So I am hugely relieved that your laptop has survived.
Yeah, I still have 28%, so we can still go on.
We will stop there because it is at the hour mark. Petra, thank you actually for back in 2001 being so inspiring as part of that course. That course was what encouraged me to develop my career in this direction. And I know the same for Ricardo as well.
I'm glad to hear that.
Claudia and Oliver Rocks, they were all that course was hugely inspiring.
It was a nice course. I also enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah,
and I did not feel like a teacher. So it was just like sharing knowledge with someone.
We're not so different in age, and I felt like a little boy learning, and one of the kids up there. So I remember that feeling of feeling so young at that meeting. It's very strange. But thank you for that, and thank you for taking the time today to talk to me.
It was a pleasure. Petra. Thank you for asking me. Okay. Bye.
Thank you for listening to The Microscopists, a bite-sized bio podcast sponsored by Zeiss Microscopy. To view all audio and video recordings from this series, please visit bitesizebio.com/the-microscopists.